Marriage gets hard when you disagreeing. When God's in the center, he's refereeing. Talk about triggers and traumas while having date nights at the gym and the sauna. To business meetings discussing the health of the wealth in the season of commerce.
When the music plays, or we just gonna be dancing?
New beginning, prosperity, abundance, family will continue to walk by faith, not by sight. We know that God will supply.
What's up, good people? Welcome back to the second episode of Marriage, Family, and Business. Now, in this episode, we're going to get to the nitty gritty. We're going to keep it real because we're talking about taking that leap of faith from leaving stable employment for a new venture. Now, speaking of leap of faith, we got to represent and shout out Built Different Foundation. It's a Christian line. Shout out to Brad and Jeremiah. That's who we got our shirts from. And they pretty much took a leap of faith in order to start their business.
Yep. Brad and his son Jeremiah met him in the mall, and Jeremiah gave us the whole spiel. I think like maybe 2 seconds into Jeremiah's spiel, he's like, "Okay, we about to buy this."
Yeah, he was 12 years old too, so he's learned a skill that it takes a long time for people to learn, but he has it.
Yep. So we are talking about the big
leap. Yeah.
The big move, the big leap. We talked about the big move last, and we're gonna talk about big leap this time.
Yes.
So I guess, man, 10 years.
Yeah.
10 years into education. So, well, babe, I guess you're gonna start with your leap.
Yeah, I'm gonna start off with my leap because for my leap, I wasn't able to stretch or anything. I couldn't stretch. It happened. I didn't know my last day at my employer. I didn't know it was gonna be my last day. Now they did send me an email letting me know they needed to meet with me. I was a teacher. I was in education 10 years. I was teaching at this school for 5 years. They let me know that I was going to have a meeting. When I saw the email, I thought it was going to be more of a let's get on the same page type of thing. It was that. It was you either on our page or you can't be in the book, period.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was it. So I didn't even finish my last period of the day. I missed the last 30 minutes to go to this meeting. And it was a full circle because the same place that this was the last room I was in before I left. It was actually the room that I got hired in, right? I went down. I was in the meeting with the director and HR and the principal. When I saw HR, I should have known something was up.
Yep.
Went down there, and it pretty much went like this. This is exactly how it went. It went, we're asking you to do something that you clearly stated that you don't want to do. You wrote a letter explaining why you don't want to do it. Even though you gave us the precautions and the other things that you're willing to do instead, if you don't do what we're asking you to do, you can no longer work here, period. And even though we know how you feel, and even though we know the different things that you're willing to do, we're giving you 4 days to let us know if you're going to do what we're asking you to do. And if not, in those 4 days, give us your key because you will not be permitted in the building. And I didn't know that this was how this meeting was going to turn out. So pretty much at the end of the day, that was my last day. My principal walked me upstairs and I got my belongings. The crazy thing is, before I walked out of the room, the director told me, "Good luck."
Yeah.
And the whole room was shocked pretty much that I made that decision anyway. And what I didn't know, that there were 3 other people that had that same meeting. And that's not even the kicker. That's not even the cherry on top about this. The cherry on top was the next day they had a staff meeting, and it was a virtual staff meeting. And in the staff meeting, the director says, the same one who told me good luck, the staff meeting, she said, "Yesterday was Katina's last day, and we don't know why."
When they actually do know.
When they knew why, it was because of them. So for the longest, I wasn't sure. Like, when it first happened, I was unsure of the decision that I made. But after I saw what was done to the other 2 individuals who had that same thing happen, they didn't do them any different than the way I did. And they offered them COBRA. They did offer them Cobra, which was like super expensive.
Yep.
At the end of the day. But of course, I went to, of course, the appeals and everything like that because we weren't able to get unemployment because it was a private school. So it was pretty much the way I did it or the way they wanted me to do it. Either way, it ended the same way. So this is pretty much for individuals, even when you're forced into that leap of faith. And when you're forced into it, of course you're not ready for it. Of course, mentally you got to get yourself together for it. But during that time, it gives you the ability to explore other opportunities outside of the traditional employment, but also to fix your priorities on what it really was. Because one thing that I did see beforehand that I'm glad I saw is I had a co-teacher, an amazing co-teacher. He taught me how to be passionate about things, but he passed. Like I would like to say at
Frank.
work, he passed, and
I still remember him
this
saying.
man loved his job, and like once he was gone, a couple weeks later, it was like, all right, we need to refill his position. It was like nothing happened. So I'm glad I saw that because it was like, oh, I know what I need to do, and if I'm led to do it, I'm gonna do it. So that's my leap of faith that I was forced into. Oh, and then it was actually called a forced resignation is what it's called. But that's my story, babe. We can segue to your story of what was your decision to leave and what was your challenges? Like what happened to get you into your leap of faith?
Well, I mean, I would have to start from the beginning. My background was a musician who wanted to do music. And I had a professor that actually pushed me into, not pushed, but gave me a recommendation to start teaching, which I then started loving it. I got into the board 2011. I was happy. I was trying to build a music program. I was trying to have something going for the kids in those communities. And man, my second year after we went on strike, 'cause first year, great, everything was amazing. Second year began with a strike, which that strike then caused me not to be paid for like 2 or 3 months. And then
It was that long?
Yeah, it was long. We come back into the building. All our administration left, and we saw like 5 different principals that year. So at the end of the year, we got to this last principal who didn't know me. But he had a team that he planned on bringing with him into the school, and he decided to just let a lot of people go. It's crazy because I was one of those teachers that stayed late. I was really trying to build something in that community, but because he had somebody else, it didn't matter. It didn't matter how good of a teacher I might have been, how many kids might have liked me, or how many other staff might have, enjoyed what I brought to the table. It was a new principal coming in because that other principal either was promoted or went somewhere else. So the education that we were giving the kids, for me, was more of I felt like it was something missing. During the pandemic, as you know, we went into a time where we had our own time.
Mm-hmm.
We was at home. I felt like it was more peace for us because it was just me and you. And with that time, I scored for a couple short films, had an album come out, did my own music. And then at the end of that year, I was put into some more things to get my first full feature as a composer. So it was like I was able to use those gifts that God had gave me and the things to do the things that I really wanted to do. Not only that, we still traveled through the pandemic.
Oh,
so
we did a lot of traveling during the pandemic.
it was crazy. Once we came back, and they let you go, but they let me stay, and we both had the same letter. We had the same letter telling them what we were willing to do and what we weren't willing to do.
But I was a private school.
But you was a private school where the government had given them like a loophole.
Yeah.
To let go of employees.
And they used that loophole. They used it.
In the public sector, they were a little bit afraid for that because it could have been a mass lawsuit, which it ended up still being a lawsuit. which I wasn't a part of, which I was a little upset about. But at the end of the day, you know, we were coming back in the building. And when we were coming back in that building, like started going full, because I think the year before that we were doing like half and half. We were still okay. But, you know, the turning point for me was when my dad died. Doing that process, I'm dealing with that. I'm dealing with grief. And we doing insurance on the side. Now, you were full-time. You were doing, man, look, let me tell you, she was killing it. She was doing, you know, good things. We were seeing, you know, finances come through. And during that process, we were also learning strategies. And I think the strategies is where it got me. Strategies is where I learned, like, well, do I need to be here 40 years? It's like, man, you know, I have other things that I can do to make money, but I don't necessarily need to be here for 40 years in order to have a really good retirement. We can actually create our own retirement through some of the strategies that we've learned, how to teach and how to sell to other individuals. So I think the biggest thing for me, the leap of faith, was like, I think during that year of the pandemic, I went through like 100 different financial books. And through those books, it was showing me different strategies. And then we got into insurance, and it's like, oh, I could do this, this, and this. If I would have did this 10 years ago, I could have been retired already. So coming back in the building, February, I took a leave that year, October. I came back February 2nd. Walked in the building, first day I couldn't teach. They said, well, we need to figure out if you still work here. Second day, it's my first day of teaching. I'm there early. I'm like, I'm gonna go ahead and do this. I talked to all my staff people, all my friends that was at the building. You know, they was like, man, it's good that you back. And, you know, I was a little suspect, but at the end of the day, I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this. I got to third period, which is about 9:30. I started at 7, 9:30. Like, at that point in time, it was like, you know what? This time I'm gonna be a little selfish, and I'm gonna, you know, me and my wife are gonna come together. We gonna figure this out, and that's what the leap came from. Because it's, you know, I didn't see where we are now.
Oh
there.
no, I didn't see this.
I mean,
Arizona?
Yeah,
What a child.
Faith is the evidence of things hoped for, but, you know, no evidence. You know, you don't have any evidence of what it's gonna look like. You know, I'm hoping that. Yeah, I was hoping. Yeah, we're going to be able to figure this out. That's what I was hoping for. And 18 states, a lot of driving, and a baby later. We sitting somewhere and we established, and this is probably going to be one of the best years yet, because we starting to really have a foundation of what we're doing.
Yeah.
So that I'm that's where I am right now. I love that we went through that. I would tell people here that are listening to us, you know, understand that you have gifts, you have talents, you have things that you can do in this world. Don't let that job stress you out so much because you're trying to retire. There are many ways to retire. There are many ways to actually cover your family with health. Well, actually, sometimes better than it is when you're working.
Right. So we talked about the leap of faith, but I'm going to segue into preparing for the leap. Now, again, what I told you, when I walked in, I didn't know that was my last day. At the same time, I was getting these little inklings. Now, God was sending me things. It's the aspect of preparing for the leap. So like I told you, I wasn't able to. And the thing is, you know, Vernon was still working. All right. So it was that in mind for me. And honestly, that was the time. I already had a friend who was like calling me about, hey, you should, you know, get your license. You should take the test to get your license to do financial planning and life insurance. And I was like, nah, you know, I don't know. I was very apprehensive. And honestly, once they let me go, or I was forced into resignation, I don't even know what to call it. I don't know if I quit or if they fired me. I don't know. It was like a fusion of both. I don't know what it was.
Look, people, she was confused.
I was confused, man, bewildered.
Well,
confusion doesn't come from God. So
I think the reason that she was confused more than anything from a husband's point of view is because during that time we already had started talking like, man, I don't think we're gonna be teaching much longer. We need to figure this out because we were doing insurance, but she was forced out.
Yeah, like
it was like
you had a
it was
preparation. I didn't have much preparation. I couldn't stretch.
They gave me an ultimatum as well, and we both was like, okay, if this is what happened, this is what happened. We ready for whatever the consequences was, but I don't think she was preparing for it to happen that way.
Right. I didn't stretch before the leap. I will say this: before your leap of faith, stretch. Stretch
ready.
before you leap.
Get ready.
Get ready. So in preparing for the leap, one of the best things was, of course, when you work for your employer, your insurance is through your employer.
Yep, everything.
Everything. Your health insurance. And even your health insurance for you and your family. Because for some individuals, they wouldn't take the leap because I got kids and they're on my insurance. I can't do that to them. You know, and that's you have to think about your family. It's your health insurance and even your life insurance.
Because your life insurance
is through the employer as well.
It's attached unless you've been educated to know that you need to have life insurance outside of your job.
I mean, it's some things around here saying that some employers are beneficiaries on their employees' life insurance, but that's another discussion for another day. And then there's, of course, you have your retirement, your 401k or your 403b. Everything is tied in through your employer. So other than just financially planning and budgeting because you're taking your leap of faith, it's the benefits.
Yeah.
What are your benefits going to be for yourself? And if you have family, what is it going to be for you and your family? And that's why we jumped into this. Because thankfully, my husband was still working and it was an event that occurred. So I didn't have to worry about those benefits. We already had our own life insurance policy. So, but if it wasn't that, I would have been out here uninsured that day. That it wasn't till the 30th. It would have been that day uninsured, and they offer you that COBRA. And COBRA is super expensive. So, babe, what about, were you able to do anything to prepare for the leap? Like I said, I didn't stretch.
Well, the preparation for me was different because she had already been fired. And that's at 21 that you was fired? Had to be the beginning of 21. 21, was it? It wasn't the beginning of 22, was it?
I can't even remember.
Yeah, well, it's been so long now. We went through a whole nother life after that.
Well, pandemic was 2020, so this was a year after 2021. Yeah.
So 2021, she gets let go.
October 1st.
And my salary was okay. Some of the bills were still being taken care of, but that was scary. That was scary for us. But what I would say is here.
In hindsight, remember when we first got married, I had to quit my job in order to student teach.
We've been through this before.
So we've seen it before. We went through that before. Yeah. I had to quit to student teach, and that entire 6 months, we went without two salaries in the household. And
I've been through this before.
So we've been through it before.
I've been through this as a husband. So I was like, okay, at least this time, my salary was okay. Now, I left a job that I was getting close to hitting 6 digits. Like in the next 3 or 4 years, I could have been at 6 digits with with the experience that I had. But it was like, okay, October I leave, my dad died. I'm doing this grief stuff. I started reading and figuring out like, okay, I've been working for 10 years. What do I have? People don't even look at that. They don't look at their 401k.
The 403b.
They don't look at their 403b, which is what teachers get.
People don't look at it while working. But when they leave the employer, they still don't look at it.
A lot of people don't look at it. So what I did was I did my research. I looked into my pension. I looked into my 401k, 403b. I looked and saw what I had in there. I took a loan on my 403b before to buy your ring. Myself got some claps for that because I did buy a nice ring. We'll talk about that later on the other episode.
Yeah, that's another episode.
But and then I looked into the pension, knowing that I'm 10 years in. I knew that at year 20, I would be considered full. I can take 60% of my pension and still retire at 20 years. But at year 10, because I hadn't hit 20, you got to go look and see how much money you have in there. And you know what I've been able to see in there, and the preparing that we had is like, okay, I can get that much, but I have to be off the job for this amount of time. So I had to do all the understanding, like, okay, how long is it going to take for me to get access to this money? Because some jobs don't allow you to get access to 403B while you're working, other than loans, as well as they don't allow you to get access to your pension. So when I saw that money, I was like, okay, we can get that, and that'll be our first investment towards our business, first investments towards making sure that we okay. That was good. And, you know, it helped us set up we had life insurance, build on top of that. We had a whole bunch of stuff that kept us in line with what was going on.
I mean, even for me, this was a shout out to my school that I went to back in the day. Mm-hmm. When we made the honor roll, we would get McDonald's stock. And I never touched mine at all. When we were getting McDonald's stock, it was worth $10 a share. Mm-hmm. When I actually started touching it and looking at it, it was worth $235 a share. Mm-hmm. And I had a lot of shares. So I was able to touch that. I would reach out to a couple of friends, like, do you remember we had this? They like, oh man, I touched that when I was 18. I touched that a long time ago, man. That's been gone. I'm like, nah, I held on to it. Yeah. So it was that reality of having those different investments that I wasn't even thinking about. And it is the reality of the leap, because during that time, I still was a schedule and routine person. Mm-hmm. So I had to literally, during that time, I was working as a virtual teacher. So I was 1099 under our business. Yep. And I was a virtual instructor. So I taught, it was really cool though, because I taught students from different countries, different states. So that was pretty cool, because I was able to see how a lot of the students I taught were business owners. Their parents were business owners, self-employed entrepreneurs. There was a student, his father was a truck driver, and he would be on the truck with his dad, and he would be like, you know, I'm in Montana today, I'm in California today, I'm in Florida today. So it was amazing to see how these entrepreneurs were moving and still educating their children while wanting a business together. Yep. I think it was a blessing for me to see that.
I saw it too. So
in the space I am now.
It was like a reality check for us to understand that, you know, there's people out here actually doing this already.
Yes. I had students in Iran.
Yeah.
It was amazing,
so,
honestly.
And then we had skills and knowledge. So a lot of skills that we were building through insurance and learning, you know, what we knew and how we could help other people allowed us to continue to keep our feet on the ground. But our reality is, it's not a lot of support when you jump out there.
Let me tell you something. Hold on.
Well, you got a lot of support.
One, when you take a leap of faith, stretch. 2, people are going to look at you like you are crazy. Yes. So you have to be careful on who you talk to when you take a leap of faith. Who you tell, who you're going to tell your plans to. You cannot tell it to an individual you've never seen take a leap of faith. Mm-hmm. You can't say it to an individual who's never even taken a risk. You can't, because you already have some type of fear, that's what I'm gonna call it, in the back of your head. You don't want other people to feed what's in the back of your head at the end of the day. You can't.
Yeah, it's always this little whisper saying that you can't do it.
It's like a loud whisper.
You can't. I mean, the way I was raised, I know, like, I've done things now that I look at it like, man, I'm all the way out here doing something totally different than what I was taught. So, you know, it's always going to be that whisper in the back like, no, it's not working. The education that we were getting, people, you know, you'll talk to them and tell them, well, this happens, that happens. Well, this other person said that. And it's like, well, if that other person said this, then I hope you're listening to them, because, you know, even though you're saying that, you're still not even following their advice. It's a lot of different ways of building wealth, people. I would never say it's one way. And that's when people, whenever somebody tells you it's one way to build wealth, run away from that person. Because it's a lot of bunch of ways. So many different ways to build wealth through real estate, through insurance. And some people use all of this. They use insurance, they use real estate, they use investments, and they make them work together to build their family's legacy. So
babe, if you had to do like a reflection from everything, and you had to offer some advice to an individual that was just like you, music teacher, married, taking a leap of faith, what are, let's say, 2 or 3 things that you would tell them?
Well, number one, especially if you're one of them beginning teachers, you haven't been teaching very long. Maybe you don't even have tenure yet. You need to figure out what your retirement plan is. Yeah, I was told, put an extra $50 in your 401k every time you get a loan, or every time you get a raise, because they gave you that 2% cost of living. They take the 2% and just put it all into the 401k. That's bad advice. But knowing what your job matches. Where I was at, they matched 4%. So I should have been putting 4% of my salary into my 401k. And I should have probably been taking another 5 to 10%, putting on my own insurance outside of the job. I also should have been having some type of savings plan with an additional 10% of my salary that could possibly retire me early. A lot of people don't know, like 10 good years of planning, you don't have to work that job after that 10 years.
You were about to lose your job.
I don't need this job. Like, and a lot of people, what I learned as a teacher, that it's a lot of teachers that teach subjects. They have it great. They're very talented. But my mentor teacher, Jacoby Felton, I always give him credit. He told me that teachers don't know money. And I learned that time and time again every time we went to strike, because we go on strike. Some of the people be like, man, we're going to stay out for a month. The teachers be like, no, we can't stay out a month, because they didn't have the savings. They didn't have the things put together.
My professor said that when you go into teaching, you can't you can't be in it for money or salary. Like, that's not the reason you're there.
But I would tell anybody, a person that's at Walmart with the right discipline and savings,
true,
advice and education, could be a millionaire in the next 5 to 10 years if they know how to be disciplined. It's all about discipline.
Yeah.
So I would say discipline and having these benefits outside of your job, because that job is not as secure as you think it is. As soon as you start making some money, things happen, and I've seen it happen to multiple individuals who are great teachers. So as a teacher, but I think that's everywhere. Mm-hmm. When you say, like, I don't care what place you work at, if you are an individual that works anywhere, know that your job is not secure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would say too, for like my reflection, my advice for people would be, 1, stretch before you leap, as I said before. And also, what helped me was getting into a routine, because, at work you had this routine. You would get up in the morning, you would go do this, you would go do that. These were the tasks you had in front of you. You have to be disciplined enough that if you did it for your employer, that you can do it for yourself and your business. Mm-hmm. And being disciplined too. What is in your ear? I definitely was listening to more spiritual things, listening to books.
You better listen to God.
Yeah, you better listen to God.
You better be somewhere. I don't care what God,
directly to God or a great pastor.
Yes,
but
you need to have some.
That increased for me.
You need to have some spiritual strength, because things happen.
That, and also, I got into books. Like, my husband helped me to really get into books, and to the point, reading and even listening to books, like, to help me with my mindset, because that space of entrepreneurship and business, that you have to have that mindset for when things aren't going smoothly, things aren't going the way you planned them to be, like, still being determined and staying on that path. Whether it be hearing God, whether it be faith, whatever it is, like, you really gotta get your mindset together. That's, to me, I would say, the first thing too, and getting a routine, and then having your support. Like, we leaned on each other. It was some days I was doing all the leaning. It was some days he was leaning. Like, we were there for each other in different capacities.
So make sure you have somebody.
Have somebody. Like,
it could be somebody that's trying to do the same thing. It could be somebody that's doing something
partner.
Differently.
Yeah.
That's another business owner outside. You need to have friends who are in the fight with you, especially if you're trying to do something in the service industry, because it gets rough. A lot of people don't. In the beginning, I don't think it's because they weren't listening. I think it's because you're inexperienced and they don't trust you yet. But I think at this point in time, we got into the place where, you know, people do trust us. I'm like, I could tell you, like, look, you can go that way or that way, but like at the end of the day, your best interest is what I'm looking for.
Absolutely.
I don't have commission breath.
So to end this, we're going to do something different that we didn't do in the last episode, but I'm going to ask the listeners, if you're listening to this and you're actually still here to hear this, and you are taking a leap of faith, or you're in a business with a business partner or with a spouse, one is working and the other one is trying to get this dream going. What are some things that you've done or you're doing? Or if there are some other questions you have, like, let's chime in, because at the end of the day, built different, and this whole journey, it's faith. It's faith, and it's a community of people.
Yes, it's a
like
lot of
what
people.
helped us on this road was to be able to go to these states and see other couples doing it, see other families doing it full time.
Yep.
It wasn't part time. It wasn't, oh, I do this on the side. No, they were doing it, and doing it very well.
Yes,
I must say. So for you guys, let's make this a community. Let us know in the chat, message us, or put it in the chat, like anything that's helped you out, and some other things that you guys want to hear from us.
Yeah, what I would want to do is actually, look, I want to give you a couple books to read.
I got some.
Because books, how you gonna take my thing? That's
you're gonna do a book, but I got a book too.
Okay, well, it's a book that I think everybody should read. It was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. If you haven't read it, or you had somebody tell you years ago to read it and you didn't read it, it's never too late. I was one of those people that was told that, like, I think my pastor told me at 17 or 18 about Rich Dad Poor Dad, but I didn't like to read.
Well,
I'm telling you,
listen,
when they tell you that if it's a secret in a book that they didn't want you to learn, you would never learn that secret. I was one of those people. And when I got the first secret from Rich Dad Poor Dad, he'll tell you, I went on a rabbit hole. So
yes,
I went down a, well, not rabbit hole, it's a wormhole, right?
I guess the wormhole. He went down there and stayed down there. Like,
I tried to learn every single thing that I could in a short amount of time. And I think it helped us. It harmed us a little bit too. We'll talk about that in some later episodes. But at the end of the day, Rich Dad Poor Dad will be my first book for you it's a really good story. A good story to actually latch on to.
And also, if you don't like to read, there's also audiobooks.
Yes. Read or listen. It doesn't matter.
Read or listen to that book.
Yep. What book you got?
My book was Atomic Habits, simply because the discipline aspect.
Mm-hmm.
If you struggle with discipline, if you struggle with, like, just getting stuff in order, because, like, it really is discipline, I would say Atomic Habits, because it teaches you how to get yourself out of that funk. It teaches you how to force yourself to do what's positive. It says, one of my favorite quotes, it takes 21 days. It said it takes 21 days to create a habit, but it takes far more, or twice as much of the time, to release an existing habit. All right. So the 21 days you created that new habit, but what did you do to get rid of those other bad habits or existing habits that you had? Because it's going to take longer. So I believe that was a good book, Atomic Habits, to get that together.
So we got a book. We're going to start doing books now. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So a book every time.
Uh-huh.
Book that we read.
Yep.
All right. Okay. So go ahead and do the outro. What we doing?
All right then, guys. So thanks for tuning in to our second episode of Marriage, Family, and Business. I'm Katina.
I'm Vernon.
And thank you for listening to Marriage, Family, and Business.
Marriage gets hard when you disagree. When God's in the center, he's refereeing. Talk about triggers and traumas while having date nights at the gym and the sauna. To business meetings discussing the health of the wealth, to the season of commerce.